Managing Director of Paragon Trust Company and tax and private client practitioner, joins us to bring a common sense approach to money in a world of total insanity. Let's welcome Tony D'Angelo.
All right, so every Tuesday we bring on Tony D to give us his very unique and in-depth perspective on different topics. Tony, good morning, buddy. How are you?
Good morning, Lee, and proud to be among you guys.
Where are we going first today?
Well, this hit me last night, and I really didn't intend for this to be part of the program as such, but I don't know if you've run into these CDC statistics on actual COVID demises. In other words, people that were passing on with COVID, and not to use that other fancy term, comorbidities tied in. And the CDC said, and you could quote whoever you want in statistics, but we always seem to rely on the CDC. Only 6% of COVID deaths were pure COVID. Other people had other things.
Right.
Last night, again, they don't want us to do math. I went to the official site, and they said there were 183,000 deaths from COVID in the United States. And if I were to multiply that times 6%, I'd end up with 11,000 deaths that were actually pure COVID. Their statistics, not mine. Now, we have a population in the United States of 328 million people. And the percentage of, quote-unquote, pure COVID demises to everybody in the country, I can't tell you when I've run into a fraction like this. 3.3/100,000th of the population. We have killed an entire economy. And when we start to look at the actual figures, nobody really knows what's being spent. The Committee for a Responsible Budget, this morning I looked, they said $5 billion. $5 trillion. $5 trillion is 25% of 2019 GNP. Now, what that comes down to is for every single one of those people who passed on from COVID, they had an allocation per capita of $2.2 million. Your government at work. Anyway, that just kind of stuck in my craw. I like to talk a little bit, if I can, and this is, kind of keeping it to the green. This whole boycott thing, the NBA, MLB, and they all decided to walk off the field, and or the court, or the rink, or whatever the case may be. And all I can think of was John Barrymore, the actor, of the Barrymore lineage. It was either John Barrymore or Humphrey Bogart. I think they both said it, and they said that the only thing a performer owes the public is a good performance, but has an obligation to perform. And when I started to look at this, and I thought, hey, it's great to have a cause, but yet there's something troubling me with this, Lee Elci, which is a cause without consequences. And I grew up during the time, when you and I first started to talk about a year and a half ago. We had talked somewhat, before then, years ago. We were talking about Muhammad Ali. And, of course, if you're going to, do revisionist history, let's get rid of Muhammad Ali, too, while we're at it. Now, this is a man who had a cause, and his cause was that something he really believed in. He did not want to fight in a war which he believed were people in this war. This was his belief that, really caused him no harm. He said the people in the United States who hate me and who are racist towards me cause me a lot more harm than that, than somebody, a couple of continents away. And for 3.5 years, he could not make a living as the heavyweight champ of the world. Now, you think about that. You think about the economic consequences. But he was so, shall I say, he was so sincere in his conviction, he said, this isn't right, I'm not going to do it. Martin Luther King, who was a Christian, not a Muslim, he said, look, I don't agree with the guy's religion, but you got to admire his courage. And I think society sends a terrible message to business, to schools and whatever, saying you can now walk out, whatever your cause is. Who's to say my cause isn't greater than your cause, and we're supposed to economically support you, and then we're going to treat you like you are some sort of a hero and a great person when you haven't suffered a dime.
Listen, I couldn't have said it better. I mean, you're right on the money. What is, what is the criteria? Like I said, what if I want to walk out right now for whatever reason?
Yeah, walk out. Something bothered you today.
Yeah. So
walk out.
I mean, does it have to be a racial thing? Does it have to come down to the color of your skin, Tony? I mean, if because of my color, or can I walk out because I'm supporting a racial issue, right? Does it have to be a racial issue for me to be able to have carte blanche and do whatever I want?
I was working in Stanford High School thinking I wanted to be a teacher in the late 1970s. And we would have kids walking out of class for Save the Whales. It's like they walked out of class.
Right,
And to which the teacher said, look, if you don't come in here and take this test, you're going to flunk.
Right.
They got back in the class.
Sure.
Well, so you can walk out for anything you like.
Well, I know, but now that teacher, if it were today, fast forward to today, they'd be like, the teacher would be, go ahead and get out. I'll give you an A. You're good to go. You don't have to take this test because we're, respecting your right to protest. I mean, that seems like where we are, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, the whole thing is fundamentally protests have consequences, and it's. And of course, they all want us to believe that this is, quote unquote, this is new and this is unprecedented. I was looking at a racial incident on the 1953 Brooklyn Dodgers, 1953, close to 70 years ago. Jackie Robinson, who was a great man, who's now given attributions that are far beyond things that he ever did, had to move from second base to third base because he came up late. He came up as a 30-year-old. And Charlie Dressen, the manager, said, you better go to third base. Now, in doing that, he displaced a white player, Billy Cox, who was sitting on the bench. And there was a thing between the white players and the black players. And was settled in spring training where Roy Campanella said, hey, look, we can destroy this team, we can stop making money, and we can blow the season, or we can get out and play some baseball and, show people how they're supposed to act when they work together. That team was 104-49 that year. I mean, these are the lessons we're supposed to be teaching, but we don't. We're consistently ratcheting down to the lowest common denominator. And when we do that, and then taking away economic freedom, taking away somebody's ability to make a job and then making them dependent on whatever the government says. I mean, we're in a very dangerous place in this country.
You had mentioned something off the air, which has been something that's been bothering me. Like, I don't really begrudge anybody to protest. If you want to walk out, like, I understand, people walk out for anything. But if you're, if you have the bully pulpit and you want to be, you're LeBron James and you want to make a statement, okay, well, it's my choice whether or not I want to watch anymore. Or if I were the owner, I certainly wouldn't pay you. But what bothers me more than any of that stuff is this canonization of criminals, right? People who are just bad people.
I'm so happy you mentioned that, and I'm glad I write things down given my age. I was looking at some statistics last night on that from the CDC, and this is almost, it would be laughable if it were funny. There were 74, this is the 2018 figures, there were 7,400 black homicides in 2018. This is half of the national average, and this is 13% of the population. Tells you there's a horrible problem right there. Of that figure, 200 people were killed by police. 97% of them either were resisting arrest or had a gun or whatever. And, I mean, the thing is, my mother would always say, you want to get into trouble, you'll find it.
100%. But can you imagine taking using your profession to walk off, like the NBA walking off, Major League Baseball walking off, the NHL walking off for a man who has charges of domestic abuse, has gun charges, drug charges, fought with cops, was multiple tased, had a knife on him. What are we doing, Tony? I mean, I don't get that.
I'm at a loss because I know, recently I had to make a decision here based upon, this was something we were talking about for a year, with a group of people as far as, I will call it a business transaction. There were things in that transaction that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, and I said, look, we just can't do it. They're not being upfront. There's no integrity. It's bad. It's wrong. We got to get our rice and beans somewhere else. Sorry, kids can't do it. But yet we realize that anything we do has consequences. But yet I think you hit it on the head, Lee, where it's like you have a person who is all these things, and this is somebody who's really kind of lived their life without consequence, and
Right.
a whole bunch of people rush to, make this person a hero. And I don't care what color they are. It's just a very bad example for kids, society, and you name it.
All right, Tony, great stuff as always. By the way, did you get a chance to see where your favorite subject, the governor, decided that he wants 5 more months of executive order rule? Did you see that yesterday?
Well, yes, I did, and the only thing I have to say to that is, hey, kids, go back and look to see in history when people tried to negotiate with dictators and see where it got you. It's time to legislate, come out of the hole. Joe Biden, come out of the basement. We need some leadership, and we just ain't getting it.
Can you imagine, though, if a conservative, like if Trump said, listen, I'm going to govern for the next 6 – I've already governed 6 months. I'm going to govern – I want another 6 months without any legislative assistance. I mean, people would lose their minds.
Go back to civics and read separation of powers, right, for crying out loud, and why you have this. And again, there's not going to be any real freedom without economic freedom, and very, very rarely do I find somebody in government who actually gets that.
All right, I'm going to steal your term, a cause without consequence. Is that okay?
Oh, hey, have a part.